Let me start from the beginning. Veronica, let's call her that, and I had been together for 8 years. It started out like any other relationship: long talks late at night, future plans, the usual stuff you think is going to last forever. You know, buying a house, getting a dog, going on trips, all that dream life stuff. We both loved animals, and when we decided to adopt a dog, I thought it was a symbol of our commitment. We named him Thor because, yes, we were those people who gave our pets heroic names, but things started to change. You know how when you're in a relationship, there are those little cracks that show up. At first, it's nothing huge: silly arguments about the thermostat, annoying habits that you never noticed before. But then, those cracks start to get bigger. Eventually, I found out she'd been emotionally distant for a while. I was working long hours, and she kept saying she was just tired or had a lot going on. I thought maybe it was just stress. But then, one night, I came home early from work expecting to surprise her with takeout and a movie, and I found her sitting on the couch, texting some guy from her work. Not just "Hey, how's your day?" but flirtatious, intimate stuff. I'm not a guy who flips out easily, but I felt my whole world shatter in that moment. So, after confronting her and getting the whole "I can explain" speech, we had the dreaded talk. Long story short, she admitted to cheating on me for months, and had already fallen for the other guy. To say I was crushed would be an understatement. I tried everything: therapy, giving her space, whatever, but she had already made up her mind. A few weeks later, she dropped the bomb on me. "I want a divorce," she said. No warning, no "let's talk this through," just a flat-out decision. It felt like a punch to the stomach, but there was a part of me that knew it was coming. I guess in the back of my mind, I had been seeing the signs. But the worst part was how cold she was. No apology, no emotional breakdown, just, "I'm done, so we go to court." And that's when things get really bad. Veronica hired a top-tier lawyer, and I had some overworked, underpaid public defender who could barely remember my name. But it didn't matter, she already had everything lined up. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could fight for Thor, our dog. I'd raised him since he was a puppy, and I genuinely couldn't imagine my life without him. He was a part of me. In court, her lawyer came up with some BS about how she would provide a more stable home for Thor because I was living in a cramped apartment, and she was in the house we'd bought together. It was completely unfair, but she had all the cards. The moment she got the house, the car, the money, I knew I was losing. But Thor, that was something I thought I could hold on to. And then came the gut punch. The judge, this older guy who looked like he'd been presiding over divorce cases for decades, asked, "What about the dog?" I sat there for a second, trying to figure out what to say. I wasn't exactly prepared for this, but I had to try. I said, "Your Honor, I've had Thor for over 5 years. I've raised him, trained him, and taken care of him. He's not just a dog, he's part of my family." Then Veronica did something that shocked me to my core. She laughed. Not like a polite chuckle, but an actual, cold, mockery-filled laugh. It wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. She knew that Thor was the one thing I couldn't live without. She knew I would be devastated if she took him away. She looked at the judge and said, "Oh, come on, Derek. You think you can take care of him. You can't even take care of yourself. I can provide him a proper home. You can barely afford rent." I wanted to argue back, but my voice caught in my throat. I felt like I was on the edge of a breakdown, but I couldn't show weakness. I didn't want to look pathetic in front of the judge, even though I felt like one giant, bleeding wound. The judge, without a second thought, sided with her. Based on the fact that Miss Hayes has stable housing and Hayes is currently in an apartment, custody of the dog will go to Mrs. Hayes, just like that. It was over, and to make it worse, Veronica added, "Don't worry, Derek. I'll send you pictures of him. Maybe." I honestly felt like the room was spinning. The walls felt like they were closing in. How could she do this? How could she be so heartless? The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had shared a life with, was willing to destroy me just to get back at me. I barely remember walking out of the courtroom. The only thing that mattered was the fact that she had my dog. She took him, and I had no idea what to do next. I was completely broken, so a few weeks pass. The initial anger from the divorce starts to fade. It's like that numb phase, where you can't even feel your own emotions anymore. You just go through the motions, work, eat, sleep, repeat. All I had left were my memories. Sometimes, when I got home from work and there was no one to greet me at the door, I'd break down. I had no one to share my day with. I felt completely alone. Then one evening, while I was scrolling through social media to distract myself from the mess that was my life, I got a text from an old friend. Let's call him James. He was a guy I'd known for years actually. He was the one who introduced me to Veronica. So, I wasn't sure if I could trust him entirely after all that went down, but I figured he at least owed me the truth. James' text read, "Dude, I know you're going through some stuff, but I need to tell you something about Veronica and Thor. I don't know if you've heard yet, but she's going to put him down. I just thought you should know." At first, I thought I'd misread it. I actually had to blink a few times and read it again. I mean, put him down, Veronica, Thor, it didn't make sense. I immediately texted back, "What are you talking about? Why would she do that? She's always hated the idea of putting a dog down." James responded quickly, "She's been talking to a vet that doesn't ask too many questions. I heard her tell her sister she was going to do it next week. I think she's just trying to get back at you, man. She knows how much Thor meant to you. She wants to hurt you one last time. I don't know how much longer he has, but I figured you should know." The room spun. I was sick to my stomach. I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had just kicked me in the chest. Why the hell would she do this? She didn't even like Thor half the time when we were together. She barely even paid attention to him when he tried to snuggle up on the couch. But now, after everything she'd taken from me, she was willing to kill my dog. I couldn't let that happen. Not without a fight. Thor didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve to be a pawn in her cruel game. I immediately tried to contact her. I called her, texted her, even emailed her. No response. Nothing. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. I left her a message. "I know what you're planning. You can't do this. Thor is not just a dog, Veronica. He's family. Please, don't be this person. You've already taken everything from me, don't take him too." But, of course, there was no reply. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with 100 different thoughts. I thought back to all the good times I had with Thor. The way he'd greet me at the door after work, wagging his tail so hard it looked like his butt was going to fall off. The way he'd sleep curled up next to me on the couch, keeping me warm. The walks in the park, the car rides where he'd stick his head out the window, loving the wind in his face. He was my constant, my little buddy. And now, he was being taken from me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How dare she? How could she use my dog like that? She didn't even love him. She was doing this just to hurt me, and I couldn't let it happen. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't just going to sit by and watch her destroy the last piece of my heart. I was going to get Thor back. And I was going to make sure she understood just how far I'd go to protect him. I started making calls. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I had to act fast. The clock was ticking. I reached out to a few people I knew who might be able to help me, including a couple of friends in the dog community. One of them was a woman named Sammy who worked as a vet tech. I didn't want to tip Veronica off, but I needed any information I could get. I needed to know which vet she was using, when the appointment was scheduled, and anything else I could do to stop this from happening. Sammy came through for me. She knew of a shady vet in the area who didn't care about the ethical side of things. She even gave me the name of the clinic. That was my lead, but I wasn't going to stop there. I needed more. I needed to find out exactly when the appointment was. I had to know the plan. So, I did what anyone would do when they had nothing left to lose. I got sneaky. I reached out to Veronica's sister, someone I had always gotten along with. I messaged her on Facebook, pretending like I was just checking in, just small talk, but deep down, I had a plan. I asked her if she knew when Veronica had scheduled the vet appointment for Thor. It took some back and forth, but eventually, her sister let slip that it was scheduled for next Friday. I had my date. I had my plan. Now, I wasn't just going to fight for Thor. I was going to fight dirty. I was going to make sure that this wasn't just a sad chapter in my life. I was going to turn this into the most intense revenge story ever. If Veronica thought she could hurt me like this, then she had another thing coming. After gathering intel, I found out exactly where and when Thor was supposed to be put down. A shady little vet clinic that had zero morals, run by a guy who would do anything for the right price. I knew I had to act fast, so I went straight to the clinic with a fat envelope of cash because if there's one thing shady people love more than cruelty, it's money. I walked in, met with the vet, a nervous, scrawny guy who clearly wasn't in this for the love of animals, and I laid it out for him. Listen, I know you're scheduled to put down a dog named Thor today. That's my dog. I don't care what she paid you, I'll double it. Now if you cancel the appointment and let me take him. At first, he hesitated, mumbling something about policies and not getting involved in domestic disputes, but the second I pulled out 10 crisp $100 bills and slid them across the counter, his morals went right out the window. He nodded. Fine, but you never saw me. Take him and go. My heart was pounding as he led me into the back room. And that's when I saw him, Thor. He looked terrified. His tail barely wagged, and then he tried to move. He flinched like he was expecting to be hit. My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. I knelt down and ran my hand over his fur. That's when I noticed the red marks, bruises, on his legs, his stomach, even near his ribs. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would break. She hit him. Veronica, my ex-wife, hadn't just taken him from me, she had abused him. My hands were shaking as I turned back to the vet. Did she do this to him? He looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. That's when I had an idea. I'll pay you even more if you call her and ask what happened to Thor. Pretend like you're just checking for medical history. Record the whole thing. He hesitated. I pulled out another 500. He stopped hesitating. A few minutes later, I stood in the corner of the room while the vet made the call, putting it on speaker. Veronica answered. Hey, just wanted to ask, Thor's got some bruising. Was he injured recently? Oh, that, he's just an annoying little mutt. Got on my nerves, so I smacked him around a few times. He deserved it. Anyway, thanks for taking care of it. I don't want to deal with him anymore. I swear to God, I saw red. She said it casually, like she was talking about taking out the trash. The vet ended the call. My hands were in fists, my breathing shaky, but I knew I had to stay calm. Because now, I had evidence, and I was about to ruin her life. The ultimate payback. I wasted zero time. I took the recording and went straight to a lawyer and an animal rights organization. They were horrified and told me this was more than enough to press animal cruelty charges. Fast forward 2 weeks, and guess who gets a knock on her door from the police? Veronica. She actually had the audacity to call me and scream that I set her up as if she hadn't confessed on a recorded line. I let her rant for a minute before calmly saying, You took my dog. You beat my dog. You were going to kill my dog. Now, you're going to pay for it. Have fun in court. I hung up, poured myself a drink, and for the first time in months, I actually smiled. She tried everything, crying, fake apologies, blaming stress for her behavior. The judge wasn't buying it. The recording sealed her fate. She was found guilty of animal cruelty, slapped with a hefty fine, community service, and a criminal record that would follow her for life. She also lost custody of Thor, permanently. And me, I walked out of that courtroom with my best friend by my side. The last time I heard about Veronica, she was struggling financially because animal cruelty charges don't exactly help you find a job. Turns out, being a heartless, abusive monster doesn't pay off, and Thor, he's back where he belongs, safe, happy, loved. Every time I see his wagging tail and bright eyes, I know I made the right choice. I got my dog back, I got my revenge, and I got the last laugh.